So today I'm here to talk a little bit about what it means to choose bravery over perfection when it comes to really enabling diversity in technology. And as we all know, our client and customer preferences continue to increase at this rapid rate, which means our technology cycles and when it comes to Fintech and Insurtech have to be faster and faster all the time. We're always looking to solve bigger and juicier problems for our clients. And that means we have to make sure we have a diverse group of people there at the table ready to enact on their bravery to solve these problems. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how to better enable that in your teams and your enterprise, and what it really takes to have our people and our team members choose bravery over perfection to really bring and innovate and bring experiences to life in a very different way. So I'm really excited to dig in with everybody today. But before we get started, we do like to do our land recognitions. I'm from Alberta, Canada, and it's really important to us to recognize the Indigenous lands that we are living and working on. Our ancestors are why we are here today, and it's important for us to recognize them. So today, I'm working on Treaty 7 land in the southern part of Alberta. And at ATB, we wish to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, including Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. Treaty 7 is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta. We recognize the land as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. And I'm just going to share a little video to help you understand a little bit more about land recognition and our Indigenous peoples in Alberta.
What is land acknowledgement?
Those of us that are continuing our oral history are blessed. What we shared, that was told from way back.
We were part of the ecosystem. We were not masters of it.
You know, after we grow up from our biological mothers, the earth becomes our caregiver. Everything that we need is there.
We were raised to believe that everything has a spirit and that everything around us is alive and has a purpose.
The spirit of the land and our spirit. You can't separate land and people.
In Treaty 7 territory, I'm accepted, I'm something, and I'm with my people.
We honor our ancestors by acknowledging Treaty 7 territory. We acknowledge the Treaty 7 nations, the Piikani First Nation, the Siksika First Nation, the Kainai First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. We acknowledge the ancestral territory of the Siksikaitsitapi, the Blackfoot Confederacy, and the home of Métis Region number 3.
So moving on to perfectionism and getting caught in perfectionism. And I want to share a story with you all today about a moment where we were getting caught up in perfectionism. And it was important for us to balance that bravery over perfectionism to really ensure that we could provide a great experience for our clients through one of our digital assets at ATB. And so this past year, we've been working really hard where we've been building our very own mobile banking app at ATB. And we have been working so hard as a team to get this thing launched and out the door. And of course, you probably all recognize that when it comes to launching new technologies out into the world, it can be a very, very scary thing. And so for us, this was a big first for us. This was going to be impactful for our clients. It was going to impact a lot of our clients. It was a very first for us in regards to building our very own application from the ground up and taking that application and launching it into the market. But when it came time to launch the application at our scheduled launch date, we got a little bit scared. It was all coming to fruition, and it was all getting very real for all of us. And of course, we started to get caught up in the granularity of the performance and how the app was working, and is it ready to launch? And I think we all get so caught up in really understanding that we're trying to put something perfect out into the world, when really it's just about putting something good out into the world and continuously making it better over time. And so when it comes to technology and perfectionism, they are not a good mix. It's like oil and water. And we want to make sure that we're enabling our people to take enough risk and feel confident enough to actually put these things out into the world without getting caught up into perfectionism, wanting to make things perfect before we launch, because we know nothing ever gets launched if you're going to wait to make it perfect. Our client preferences are changing by the minute. And so if you're trying to perfect something, you need to understand that in the eyes of the people of the world, nothing is ever going to be perfect. There's always going to be somebody or something that recognizes a gap in what you're doing from their own lived experience, from their preference. And so aiming for perfectionism is a recipe for disaster. And it's really, really important to balance that perfectionism with data and information to really understand how do we ensure that good doesn't become the enemy of great, and great doesn't become the enemy of good. We want to make sure that we can actually get these technologies out into the market, enable that bravery, and not have our people get caught in perfectionism and worried about what might not go right. And so this is really critical for us to ensure that our people feel like they have the confidence and the support and the psychological safety to not get caught in this cycle of perfectionism. So we're going to go through a few things today. We're going to go through, why is bravery important in technology? We talked a little bit about that already in the story that I shared with you. We're going to talk about how to balance bravery and perfectionism. When is there a time to strive for perfectionism? Is there ever a time anymore, or is that not realistic in the day and age that we're in? We're going to talk about diversity and bravery and how it's really important to ensure you're enabling bravery in your marginalized people in your company. It's very, very critical to understand that we're not all at the same starting point. And so how can you take, how as a leader, as a colleague, can you take the time to start enabling bravery in marginalized people in the organization? Because when you do that, you can solve problems better and faster. And then I'm going to leave you with 5 steps to enabling a workforce of bravery and diversity, and we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. So we'll get started. I love this quote, and I love this book. If you haven't read this book, it's called Brave, Not Perfect, and it's about fearing less and failing more and living bolder. But the quote is, "What will I weight more heavily, the sting of failing or the pang of what might have been?" And so I think it's really critical for us to really understand that if you're going to lose sleep at night because you're going to always wonder what would have been, it's better off to take the leap of faith and potentially fail and learn from that failure versus constantly being kept up at night because you're not sure what might have been. And so as we move forward through the content today, I just want you to keep this in mind. Keep this question in mind for yourself in everything that you're doing. If it's something that's keeping you up at night, it's probably worth taking the leap of faith, even though you might fail or perceive yourself as failing. I don't love the word failing, but I don't hate it. I think it's important that we recognize that with every failure comes a lot of learning, whether it's a small failure, whether it's a large failure. There's so much learning and so much richness that comes with that. I have failed many times in my life, and most of those failures have been the defining moments of my life. And so I'll share some of those defining moments as we move forward. I love this image. Yes, I'm Canadian, and you probably see that this is a Canadian image, but with the Canada Goose jacket. But I love this image because there's so many aspects to it. I think it's really critical for us to understand that as leaders and as colleagues, when we're looking to create this atmosphere of bravery, that it all starts within us, ourselves. The atmosphere that you create for yourself, what you believe in yourself, is the atmosphere that you put out into the world. And so if you're not feeling brave yourself, I think it's important for you to understand how to ensure that you've got your, I wear these earrings that always make me feel brave. So you've got your brave earrings on, or you've got your brave shirt on, or you've got your brave jacket on. And you have to understand that the atmosphere that you're creating in yourself is the atmosphere that you're going to put out into the world, that your colleagues are going to pick up on, that if you're a leader, that your team members are going to pick up on. And so the more that you can create that atmosphere of bravery within yourself, it just has this knockoff effect on everybody else. And so it's really about understanding what it's going to take for you as an individual to create and choose bravery over perfectionism going forward, and creating that atmosphere and sharing that. I wanted to give a little bit of a snapshot of what diversity in technology looks like. So these are some global numbers, and it's really about what does it look like today in our technology landscape when it comes to diversity. And of course, we could probably spend hours on this topic and dig into why and what needs to change and what needs to be different and how might we solve problems faster if we had more diversity in technology. So there's so much to unpack here, but I think this is just a great snapshot to understand that when the majority of our people working in technology are men, and the minority are of marginalized people, I think it's really important to understand that we need to put extra effort into really enabling those people to use their voice and to advocate for their bravery, to create an environment where our marginalized people can speak up when it comes to solving problems and being in a boardroom, being at a boardroom table. The best ideas get solved with the most diverse group around the table. And so when we look at problem solving and you want to solve these problems faster, we have to have a more diverse workforce to make that happen. And if we can't do that, if this picture is going to remain as it is for years to come, we have to find ways to really enable and advocate for the marginalized people in those groups to use their voice, to be brave, and to ensure that they feel psychologically safe in the environments that they're in to solve the problems you're looking to solve faster. When I think about this one, I wanted to spend some time here around, this is a picture of Alberta. So this is where I live. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. We are surrounded by the Rocky Mountains. It's stunning. And these images take your breath away. And I wanted to spend some time and give you guys some time in the audience to write down a few instances where you feel like you've either chosen bravery over perfection and what that has done for you, or where you've failed and how that failure has maybe become a defining moment in your life. Because failure is also bravery. Bravery is really how you look at it, how you look at that situation. You could be brave for going on a roller coaster, and you can be brave for not going on a roller coaster. I saw a quote the other day from a famous author, and she talked about that making that choice to go on the roller coaster is brave, but also making that choice to honor yourself and not go on that roller coaster is also a very brave choice. So I just wanted to give a couple minutes for you to write down some of the things that have defined you, where you've chosen bravery, and those have become the defining moments in your life. And reflect on those moments and understand how you might take that choice of bravery forward in everything that you do from now on. I want to talk a little bit about what we've done and what we're doing at ATB. And so we have a wonderful network of communities at ATB where we actually advocate for and support and promote marginalized groups of people to create communities to help advance them, inspire them, educate them, give back. And one of the ones I've been a big part of at ATB has been our group Elevate, which is really about advancing women in the workplace along with our allies. And so it's about really advancing women, advancing marginalized women, and also about leveraging allyship to make that happen. Active allyship, not passive allyship. We've done a lot of work, and there's a lot of opportunity for many companies to do similar work where you're creating these communities where they feel psychologically safe within that community. And what happens is there's a bit of a groundswell effect that takes place when you create these communities. There's psychological safety for marginalized groups. And then this groundswell of psychological safety starts to take over in the organization, and it's very, very impactful. We've seen a lot of success with what we've done with our team member networks. Elevate would be one of the team member networks. I think we have 7 or 8 team member networks across the organization that really amplify and allow us to create that sense of community, that sense of psychological safety, so people can educate us, educate each other, share their stories, feel safe, and really find a way to give back to ATB and give back to our communities to advance ourselves as an organization, advance ourselves as a pillar in the Alberta community. So this is an opportunity for many people to understand how they can leverage that sense of community to create that brave environment that they're looking to create. And this is just one example of how we've done it at ATB. When it comes to enabling bravery outside of the communities that you create to maybe enable that bravery, there's some things that need to be true. In our time at ATB, creating these environments of psychological safety to enable bravery has been a fascinating journey for us. And we've realized along the way that to enable that bravery, there's a few things that need to be true. So obviously, I've talked a little bit about psychological safety already. There needs to be an environment where people feel safe to speak up, even if they're not right. They need to feel safe to share their ideas, even if their idea seems like the wildest thing and could never maybe be true in this day and age. But we all know those wild ideas are the things that come true in the future. I think about the Jetsons. So psychological safety is critical. You will not be able to enable bravery in any environment without psychological safety there. The way that I create psychological safety within my team is I am a very vulnerable and transparent leader. It helps remind everybody on the team that we're all human. We're all human beings. We all have vulnerabilities. None of us are more brilliant than the other. We all have important ideas to bring to the table, and it's important to make space for those ideas. And so as a leader, it's really important to me to ensure that I'm creating that psychologically safe environment by being vulnerable and transparent myself. If I'm not willing to do that, that environment is not going to get created. And my team has been so very accepting of me and of that, and the fact that I am human and I do make mistakes, and I'm going to own my mistakes. I'm going to learn from them, and we're going to continue to move forward. Another thing that's really critical, and we've talked a lot about it today as well, is just creating a diverse group of people to solve problems faster. I think that, diversity has become a bit of a buzzword, especially in our industry, knowing that, in the financial industry, it's predominantly men that have been worked in the financial industry for years, and the tides are changing. And I think what's really critical is that when we talk about diversity, we need to understand why. We need to understand that what happens when you have a diverse set of lived experiences around the table is you solve the problems you're looking to solve faster because there's more solutions. And I think if we look at it that way, we'll understand better the value of diversity and really ensure that we're not hiring the same person over and over again just because that person thinks and acts and looks like us. That's not how it needs to work, and that's not how you're going to solve the problems you need to solve at the speed that we need to solve them at. The next thing is really about listening. Listening to understand, not to be understood. I think that was one of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits that I read. I think I read that book in high school. And I think it's just really critical to ensure that you have active and great listening skills, that you're not waiting to say what you want to say next, that you are showing your team and you're showing your people that you are empathetic and that you are listening and you do care about them. Listening demonstrates that you care. And I think without that caring environment, you'll never be able to enable the bravery you're looking to enable to make those big, bold decisions and potentially create a solution for clients that has never been created before, solving problems that you've never been able to solve before. The next thing I want to talk about is idea ownership. This one's been really fascinating for us at ATB. We embarked on a journey about 4 years ago where we started to let go of, that was my idea. Well, that was my idea. Letting go of idea ownership really creates this sense of collaboration, because we all know that an idea starts somewhere, but of course we're always building on those ideas, especially in the technology world. An idea never stays as it once was. It changes every day. And so letting go of idea ownership has been really critical for us, and understanding that we all collectively own the success and the failures of what we're working on has been great. It's been a fascinating journey for us to say, I don't need to own that idea. I don't need credit for that idea. That idea was the group, because essentially there was maybe a seed planted and we all worked together to bring that idea to life, while we all added our own feedback into that loop to make it a better idea or a better solution going forward. I talked a little bit about empathy, but this is just really, again, putting ourselves in other people's shoes, really listening to understand, working with our people to ensure that when we're listening and when we're seeking to be empathetic, that we're not interjecting with our own stories of similarity so that people feel like they're not alone. That's not necessarily empathy. It's really about just listening and being there to say, I'm sorry that that's happening to you, or how can I help, versus interjecting your own story into that person's story. I think this is something that it's human nature, because you want to relate to that person, or you see somebody suffering and you want to relate, but it's not necessarily about relating. It's about listening. It's about understanding. It's about being empathetic and understanding how we can help make change and drive change going forward. The other one that's been really, really great for us is this notion of yes and. And so we've really learned to, and this really helps enable a brave environment. Rather than shutting each other's ideas down, like saying that's not a good idea, no, we shouldn't do that. It's an improv skill. And so in university, I took an improv class, and it might have been one of the most valuable classes I've ever taken, because I learned about yes and. I learned how to keep the story going. I learned how to build off of what somebody else might have shared versus shutting it down and saying no, but. So if you can even take one takeaway today, would be to interject the language of yes and within your team and see what happens. See if it makes a difference. Take the words no but out of your team and see what happens, and exchange them with yes and. And I think you'll start to see people becoming braver by the day. It is very powerful, very effective, and it really enables that sense of collaboration and the ability to build off of each other's ideas going forward without feeling like you're shut down, without feeling like your amygdala has been robbed and you're going to go into fight or flight because you think that your ideas are bad and you're being shut down. It's not necessarily saying that there aren't any bad ideas, because I think we all know sometimes there are. It's just really about understanding how you can take what people are sharing, create that psychological safety by saying yes and building off of those ideas to evolve them into something that is substantiated enough to solve the problems that you're looking to solve. And I think it's really critical to create a brave environment. You need to be able to chase the bumpy waters. You can't hide from the hard things. I love this quote: "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." I think most of our learning comes from the bumpy waters. And you might feel like you're on, the edge of a cliff and you're going to fall off and it's going to become a complete failure. And then all of a sudden you pull a string and you have a parachute. And so I think it's just really, really critical to encourage your people to chase the bumpy waters and stick to the bumpy waters, and find the grit in the gears and really work it out, versus walking away from something that gets too hard, or giving up because it doesn't feel perfect. Things aren't going to feel perfect, but it's really important to keep going. So this is really about when things don't feel perfect, when it feels like there's grit in the gears, you have to keep going, and you have to encourage your team to keep going, they will learn so much in that situation, and actually so much bravery will come from the fact that when they look back at that bumpy sea, at those bumpy waters, they'll realize what they've accomplished, and they'll realize how brave they had to be to make it through those bumpy waters and make it out on the other end. I've had many defining moments in my life. These are just a few of them, and I'm not going to go through all of them today. But I'm a mom of 3 boys. I had 3 kids under the age of 3. I had twins. I myself suffered from some postpartum anxiety. And so after my first son, and I was really, really afraid when I was pregnant with the twins and going to have twins. And so I worked really hard to ensure that I wasn't caught up in this cycle of perfectionism when it came to being a mom, because that was creating all of this anxiety for me as a new mom. And I had twins on the way. And I think you can see the bottom picture in the middle there. That was my son's baptism. And what happened there was, when I was pregnant with the twins, I gained 100 pounds. And that took a lot of bravery to do that. You know, you're growing 2 human beings, and you want to make sure that they're growing and that they're safe, and that you're doing everything you can to keep them safe. But by choosing those things, that's also choosing bravery. We've had many instances where we've had, sicknesses in our family, and it's just about choosing in those moments, choosing bravery over perfection, because that is going to be what gets you through things. I did actually go through a period of a burnout in my career, and I decided to boldly share my story about that, because I thought if I shared my story, other people might be able to relate and understand, and maybe that will be able to prevent them from going through what I went through. So I chose bravery when it came to sharing my story about burnout. And so I've had many defining moments in my life. These are just a few images to depict some of those defining moments. And I think I would love for you to understand, what are your defining moments? Where did you choose bravery over perfectionism? Where were you forced to do that? And what was the outcome of that? Looking back, are you glad that you chose to be brave? And what did you learn? So I think that's critical going forward. I think we know that today's competitive advantage doesn't come from being big, but it comes from being fast and nimble. And that's going to hold true in 2030. So as financial institutions and players in the financial industry, we really need to embrace change and harness the power of digital forces to innovate smaller, bolder cycles. And we can't do that without bravery. And so it's going to be critical for us to really understand how we enable that, so we can innovate faster and come up with bolder solutions for our clients. I want to leave you with these 5 takeaways today. So really understanding that if you want to enable bravery in your environment, if you want to create psychological safety, if you want to innovate faster, come up with bolder ideas, solve the big juicy problems that you're looking to solve, these 5 takeaways will really help enable you to solve those problems faster. So it's really about employing that diverse workforce. The more lived experiences you have at the table, the more solutions you have to your problems. And I think if you continue to look at it that way, it will start to really inspire you to understand what a diverse workforce looks like for you, and how that's going to help you achieve your goals. Creating psychological safety. There's many ways to do this, but I talked a little bit today about being a transparent and vulnerable leader or team player yourself. When people feel like they can be vulnerable and transparent, it starts to create this environment, this atmosphere, like we talked about, of psychological safety, and that really enables bravery. So the psychological safety is critical, and that environment allows you to move faster and be bolder. To really create that psychological safety, you need to be a vulnerable and transparent leader, colleague, teammate, friend, parent. I think all of that applies here. So there's vulnerability is not weakness. Transparency is not weakness. It is the leadership of the future, and our people want that. They want to be treated like the adults that they are, and they also understand that we're all human. So they want us to act like the humans we are. It sounds easy, but it's hard. So it's just really keep that in mind of where you have opportunities to show your vulnerabilities, to own your own failures, to share those defining moments that have helped define you, to share where you've chosen bravery over perfection, and to be really transparent about your own journey and how you got there. And people will really start to feel like they can speak up and share their ideas. You need to continue to listen and be curious. The curiosity is critical. Asking questions, being empathetic, listening, that is really, really our jobs as leaders, is to make sure we're doing all of that to really inspire our team to be brave and take those risks that they need to take. And of course, always asking for feedback and adjusting as you go. None of us are perfect, and nor should we strive to be perfect. And that's what this is all about today. So I'm committed as a leader to continuously learning every single day. I learn something new every day. I'm always asking for feedback and adjusting as I go, because that's what makes me a better human being. That's what makes me a better leader. And that's what makes me be able to contribute to our society in a much more impactful way. So it's about removing your ego, letting your ego get out of the way, and asking and being committed to continuous improvement for yourself every single day. So from there, I maybe pass it back to Emily and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tevi. I'd like to say, obviously, from me and from everyone listening today, that was truly fascinating. Thank you so much. It's always nice when people add a personal story behind what they're saying. It really shows through your presentation and what you're saying, how kind of passionate you are about this. I'm hoping that we can move into a Q&A. We've only got time for one question, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So something that I would like to kind of end on, and I think makes a lot of sense, is to ask, what do you think is the future for a topic like this? Maybe thinking about what direction and actions can we expect in the workplace from these sorts of dialogues and these sorts of topics?
Yeah, I think when I think of this conversation, I do feel like it's going to start to become more of a strategic conversation. So I think, it feels like a bit of a nice to have or not a need to have, but it's a need to have. And I think it's going to shift from being, this is something we do on the sides of our desks, to this is actually part of our strategy. This is how we're going to be successful as an organization, as an enterprise. This is how we're going to enable success in our people. And it's going to become much more of a strategic conversation that's weaved into what we're trying to achieve for our organizations versus just something that we're doing on the sides of our desks.
Amazing. And yeah, I'm afraid we only had time for one question today, but I would just like to say a huge thank you. Obviously, thank you to everyone joining us, and thank you to you, Tevi. That was a fantastic presentation. Is there anything you'd like to finish, kind of drop your socials or where anyone can find you?
Yeah, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Tevi Legge on LinkedIn, as well as at Tevi Legge on Twitter. Super simple. Give me a follow, and would love to pick up the conversation with anybody there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tevi.
Thank you.